Well, you can't make anything happen unless you have money pouring in from companies to help the transition for climate. Someone told me today on TV that it's CapEx is where it's at. So let's talk to three individuals who are going to put some of that money to work, and CapEx is where it's at for them. Joining me now is Kara Hurst, Chief Sustainability Officer for Amazon. Also, Miguel Viega Pestana, as SVP Corporate Affairs and Sustainability at RB, and also Jim Gowan, Chief Sustainability Officer at Verizon. There is obviously a strategic partnership between all of these companies. And I'd just like to get your take, guys, on kind of how it's been working together, what you've learned, and how COVID has kind of impacted the conversation that you're having in the office and with your peers. And Kara, because you're at Amazon, sort of the leader of that climate pact, I'm going to start with you, Kara.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for having us on. I'm always excited to talk about the climate pledge and certainly our partnership together. So it's really exciting to see companies coming into this level of ambition and committing to net zero carbon by 2040. Working together is the only way that we are going to be able to tackle the climate crisis with urgency and at scale. So we're really excited to have partners like Verizon and RB in the mix, along with others. Mercedes-Benz just joined. So we'll increase that collaboration, we'll increase the ability to drive solutions and work together to identify where we can send those signals to the market that we need products and services to help us decarbonize. And I think we're finding ways to do that together right now, which is really exciting. As for COVID, for us, it has certainly been an incredible year, or one where health and safety of our associates comes first, but has really shown me that, one, we are understanding how we're all interconnected in new ways. We're understanding the health impacts of our air quality and our planet in new ways. And for Amazon specifically, I've been incredibly just interested and impressed with how we pivoted so quickly in our operations. And that's really shown me, I think, some interesting ways I think we can continue to pivot and grow to tackle sustainability challenges.
All right, so let's go right down the line for the introductory here. Miguel, how about you?
Well, good day, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here as well. For those of you who actually don't know RB very well, it's also known as Reckitt Benckiser. We're the maker of brands that you may be familiar with, like Lysol and Dettol and Mucinex and Finish and Vanish, and a number of brands that people use every day in their homes, but also are very, very relevant right now in the middle of COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're all confronted with. Our brands have been at the forefront of helping people protect themselves and the ones they love. So has COVID been a major issue for us as a business? Absolutely, because at the heart of everything, it's been about protecting our employees first and foremost, our 42,000 colleagues, keeping them safe and keeping them working, because our factories have continued to produce as much as we possibly can to meet the growing needs and the demand that is out there for those brands. And secondly, of course, it's all been about how do we find ways of partnering and connecting to our key customers and suppliers like Amazon, who are obviously are retail partners to us as well. I guess in terms of the link to the partnership, I think it's really important for us to understand that, as was said by Kara, everything we do in this space, it requires us to look for innovative solutions right through our value chain, upstream and downstream. Everything from the raw materials that we source and the carbon built into those raw materials to the way we produce and manufacture, but also down to the way that we then retail and sell those products to our consumers. And as importantly, how those consumers use those products and brands, and then what it is that happens at the end of life. So we need to find smart new ways of working with partners who look across the value chain. So there's a lot we can learn from each other, but more importantly, there's a lot more that we can do with each other.
Yeah, I was going to say, everyone knows your Lysol wipes now. Everyone has that on like their speed dial for Amazon. Jim, how about you? Verizon, obviously very different from RB. So how do you fit into this partnership, and how has COVID affected that?
Well, first off, Alex, thanks so much. And Kara, this all started because of her. Kara reached out to me, and we had an initial conversation, and she had me at a low, as they say. But Verizon, we were so excited about what Amazon was doing with the climate pledge. And at Verizon, we've been on a 10-year sustainability journey. And in the last 18 months, since our new Chief Executive Officer, Han Vestberg, joined us from Sweden, it's gone to a sprint, because he has just changed the entire way we've been thinking about things, starting all the way with our climate neutral pledge by 2035. So it was just, a doubling down of that when the climate pledge came and Kara talked to us about joining up. It was a yes, absolutely. How do we get involved? In terms of learning from each other, we're learning every day. That's the best thing about sustainability. I'm talking to competitors this morning on a board call. We currently chair Jesse, Globally Sustainability out of Brussels, with 60 of our competitors around the world, but we're talking in a way that's not competitive. And that's a real game changer. And then when we think about just your comment on COVID has been incredibly impactful. I love the way both of my colleagues there said, they've talked about their employees first. That's absolutely, we think about employees, we think about shareholders, we think about our customers. And that's what, our wireless and wireline services, where I'm at home today, we're bringing that broadband service, and it's so important across the board. And then lastly, your question about how has COVID impacted sustainability specifically, it's been amazing, because just today we announced on the Bloomberg, we're offering our second green bond. Just today, this morning, it went live at 8 a.m. And it's just been, another commitment towards how we want to continue to go on our sustainability journey as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you and the EU coming out today and issuing, and saying they're going to issue a lot of green bonds as well. So there's so much to unpack with this. And Kara, I specifically, what do you do? So like, you go up and you call up Miguel, you call up Jim, you say, okay, guys, this is how we're going to move forward. How do you move the needle in a tangible, meaningful way versus what some shareholders and investors get worried is just greenwashing? How do you make the dent?
Yeah, well, when we started with the climate pledge, one of the things that we knew is that if at Amazon, we could really build the systems to deeply understand our environmental impacts, to understand our carbon footprint, to have the information to know what kinds of things we need to do to decarbonize within our operations over time. And with the business as complex as we are in as many industries as we are, we really thought that that could send a very encouraging signal to others. And so not only did we want to commit to decarbonizing our own operations within our fulfillment network, within our products and our services, our cloud computing business, but we wanted to, create this opportunity to work with others and to send those signals. And so that's where the climate pledge was born out of those conversations internally around our level of ambition. And then also, as we thought about the science and what it's telling us in terms of the need to move more urgently, and that the effects of climate change are being seen, in more devastating ways than ever. And so in the way that we do this is that we really are willing to share everything that we're doing, how we're looking at, what this means for us internally, what kinds of operational changes we're making. We come together with other NGO partners like We Mean Business or Series to bring together coalitions to talk about our supply chains and our value chains, as James mentioned, and think about what kinds of solutions that we can provide. Not everybody has big teams like ours in our companies and companies of our size. And so we need to share as much as possible. Sustainability is not a competitive thing. We need everyone to come on board with this level of ambition. So I think, I do spend a lot of my time now talking to my colleagues across many different industries and saying it is really, really challenging. And I don't want to underestimate the level of ambition that my colleagues here have taken on. It's incredibly challenging to step into this. But I think that if you are willing to take that leap, willing to say, we know some of how we're going to get there, but not all of it, and we're going to invent together, then the more of us that come into that, the stronger this will be. And so we spend a lot of our time just sharing what we're learning, building coalitions, building partnerships, bringing NGOs in, working with Christiana, who's a phenomenal co-founder of the Pledge and guide for us, and just trying to create that community of learning together and a community of ambition.
I'd love to, there's two things I want to go here, but first I just want to get all of your takes on how much of doing that is dependent on any kind of government policy, no matter what government you're talking about. we can just go down the line for this, and then we can circle back with something else. Kara, you want to just go first on that?
Sure. I mean, we are always working with our partners, regulatory policymakers, government partners. I think governments do a lot to level the playing field. They do a lot to incentivize new technologies. We've certainly seen that in the renewable space with wind and solar to drive cost parity for some of these technologies that we need. And they drive a lot of awareness of these issues as well and availability. For us, I think of the transportation example. When we established the pledge, we made an order for 100,000 electric vehicles. I think it was the largest ever order with a company called Rivian. We need government partners, however, to come together on the infrastructure that's needed to enable the electrification of fleet in that environment. So there are things that we can do as companies and things that will require governments to come together and partner with us.
Yeah, can I jump in on this as well, if I may?
Please, yeah.
Just to say, look, I'd love to have answered the previous question as well, but I can come back to that at another point. But
you can do both. You can do both. We're easy here.
No. I will never do that. I will answer the question I've been tasked to answer now. So let me do that first. Look, I think it's fair to say that all actors have a role in this. That everyone from governments to business to civil society organizations to all of us as individuals, because a lot of what we are talking about ultimately is about our own individual behaviors and our own willingness to make some of the changes that we need to course correct our lives so that we can live in a more sustainable way as a planet. I think all of us have to sort of take some responsibility, some accountability for our own actions. I think, as Kara said, governments they're the enablers of they create the frameworks, they create the incentives. They have both a carrot and a stick approach. They can apply they can be an accelerator through offering incentives, or they can actually create legal frameworks that stop people from doing things, and that's the stick to enable us to stop doing certain things which have a negative impact on things like climate change. So I think clearly governments have a role. I see the need for governments first and foremost to honour their commitments, the commitments they've already made. There's still a lot of work that we need to do to deliver that. We have a big major conference of parties coming up next year, happens to be in the UK, where I'm based now. That will be a really important moment to reinforce the decisions taken by governments to act. I think there's a sense that we all have that we need some strong signals from government as well. So we certainly look forward to that COP. We're hopeful of a positive outcome there, and we'll do our best to support it as much as we can.
So quick follow on that, and Jim, just be patient with me for 1 second. Miguel, if you don't get the kind of pledges that you want from a government, do you say, okay, like I can't make these changes, or does it just take longer?
No, I think we're all, as companies, I mean, all my colleagues we've all said we have our own commitments to address the climate change agenda built into our business model. It's something we're pricing into our business model. So everything we do, we're going to take action irrespective. We think it's so critical. And by the way, our own employees want us to do this. Our consumers and our customers expect it of us. So we will take that action because it's the right thing for us to be doing. Is it important for governments to create the right framework? Of course, it's important. It's something that we certainly believe is it's not a prerequisite, but it's certainly going to help accelerate the take-up by others.
All right, Jim. Sorry, thanks for your patience. And then for you,
no.
So how pivotal the government is.
Yeah, I'm not going to echo anything both Kara and Miguel said, but obviously, if we sit around and wait for things to be legislated or regulations to be put in place, we wouldn't really move the needle very fast. So to answer your follow-up question there, we don't sit around waiting for legislation. I love Kara's comments on some of the incentives that could be put in place for wind and solar or EV, electric vehicles, but they're not going to be the end game. Either you're committed to it or you're not. The government can certainly help expedite. The government can certainly help build infrastructure. But even, when you're looking at what the EU is doing, what we're doing in Washington, D.C., or even some of the challenges, in Southeast Asia and some of the different countries, if you sit back and purely wait, things aren't going to happen. So, from a Verizon perspective, we've made a commitment. We've made our long-term goals. We have 2025 goals. We have 2030 goals and 2035 goals. And we're going to focus on them, and we're going to keep that constant drumbeat, knowing that we're going to have partners like this who are going to be following right along with us.
So to that point, Jim, and again, I'd love to get your thoughts, all of you on this. I'd love to get perspective on like what's the surprisingly easiest thing that you were able to accomplish, and what was the surprisingly hardest thing you weren't able to accomplish, or you did but it was real hard to get there. And Jim, you can kick it out this time.
Sure. So probably the biggest surprisingly easy thing, but I had no idea, one of those V8 moments, was the employee base. We have over 130,000 employees. Our employees actually got sustainability quicker than the rest of the company, and it started like a groundswell. So we, real novel approach. We have a green team. Well, that green team swelled to 45,000 plus people in 50 countries. And that all of a sudden started changing how you build it into your DNA. And, it's a lot of people like to say that, but that truly to me was the shock. Now the tough part, how do I keep them engaged? How do I keep feeding the beasts, for lack of a better term, because they want more. They want to know, what are we doing? You mentioned in the onset, social unrest and diversity and pay equality. There are so many aspects of sustainability that you really have to have that holistic approach. We have a big commitment on renewable energy. We are, by 2050, 50% of our energy, and to run our networks, it's quite a bit, is going to be sourced from renewable energy sources, both on-site and through virtual power purchase agreements. And with that $1 billion green bond we launched today and the one we did in 2019, that's going to help fund that. But that's not the end game. You have to keep a holistic approach. You have to look at all those different aspects there. So, some are easy, but they get tougher as they go along.
Well, was there one thing so specifically that was hard? Like, oh man, I wish that solar panel was really hard to do there. Like, was there something specific like that that was surprisingly hard?
Well, surprisingly hard is, I'll just pick on the United States for a second. Every geography has a municipality. Every geography has a public service commission. You have to get all your, rights of way. It's no different than a network build of 5G as we're doing it. It has to be handled on a local level, and it has to be handled on a federal level. But that's what we do, and we do that every day, building our network. So I'm not about to complain about that whatsoever. I just thought it might have been a little easier.
Fair enough. It's COVID. We can complain. It's okay. All right, Miguel, how about you?
Look, I think the answer is similar. I think when we actually, this February, we launched a new corporate purpose for RB. And we talk about being a business that's here to protect, heal, and nurture in the relentless pursuit of a cleaner, healthier world. And that's our core purpose. That's why we exist as a business. And I think what that shows you is a real transition from a company, from a business that actually thinks about the shareholder to a business that thinks about the stakeholder, and a business that also thinks about its role in society and the impact that it can have. And most of the impact that we obviously have is through our brands, but it's also through our value chains. It's right across the business. It's right across everything we do. When we've looked at what our employees and our colleagues think about that, we've got a 90+% positive rating. Everybody has embraced this. It's already feels like it's just part of our everyday DNA. We see people really rallying around and believing that this is the right course of action for us to take as a company. We're also going to be launching up next year. For us, it's going to be a big year because we're going to be launching our 10-year vision of where we want to go from a sustainability point of view. And the critical thing that we've been working on that is, what I found really easy, but we've certainly found that we've been able to have discussions right across the entire business with all our senior leadership teams about how to embed this into the core business. Because why? Because they believe this is going to be a driver of our future growth. And they also see this as something which is going to be key to keeping and attracting talent to come and work at RB. So for us, we see it as kind of fundamental to who we are, but also fundamental to how we're going to grow. So that's been the easy part. If I can give you my 10-second on the hard part.
Please.
I think there's some areas that we still have to make a lot of progress on. We're one of the suppliers to Amazon. And so Amazon sells literally millions of brands and products every day. We are a supplier. Our role is to try and figure out ways in which we can avoid negative impacts of our brands and products, and wherever possible, make a net positive contribution. That's essentially what we're talking about, being net positive in everything we do. We also, like Amazon, we have literally thousands of suppliers. So one of the hard things we're trying to understand is how far down that value chain can we go? What can we do to really drive consistency across? At what levels can we engage in? What can we do to keep those suppliers with us, to keep them as part of our journey? So that's a piece we're finding quite hard. And on the other side, it's how do we get people to kind of change behaviors, understand that something like carbon is going, we're going to start finding that you're going to see more and more brands talking about their carbon impacts. Well, that's fantastic, but then we also have to get our consumers and people who buy and use our brands every day to understand why that matters and to then behave differently when they use them. So there's lots of work still to do. The exciting thing is we've got great partners to think about how to go about doing that.
And when you talk about your partners, is that like, hey, supply chain, don't use coal for that plant where you're making that thing for me? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, or if you say it that way, yes. I mean, you're looking at every kind of key ingredient that you look at and use and source, and ultimately we're looking at them through a lot of different lenses. You look at them through their environmental footprint, so in terms of the water intensity or the footprint in terms of its carbon intensity. These things are going to start to become part of how you look at your raw materials, right? What you really want to do is drive the innovation funnel so you can come up with new ways, new key ingredients, new formulations, new ways that actually green your supply chain. That's also part of why this is so exciting, because it's really getting our people energized. Our R&D teams, our marketing teams, this is something that kind of gives them a ton of energy, and it gives them some sort of opportunities to kind of blue sky think about ways we could do something in a radically different way from the way we've done it in the past. So I see these things as kind of integral, as I said, to how we are going to start to do business in a much more sustainable way going forward.
Interesting. All right, Kara, your turn.
I would certainly echo the piece on employees. We have an ambassador program, which has taken off over the last couple of years. Thousands of people creating chapters all over the world. The ambition and the interest and the energy is there on that front to just embed this in their day to day. And I love hearing of all the different things that they think up that we haven't thought about on our teams, that then we can kind of share around the world, and the supply chain as well. A huge challenge in front of us. But I'll give you a very Amazon specific answer to the sort of challenge and fast moving wins. On the win side, when we launched the pledge, we time bound our renewable goal and said we were going to reach 100% renewable energy across our global operations by 2030, which was great and ambitious and an interim goal, as James was talking about, to kind of set some milestones along the way to executing on the pledge. We took a look at that in the beginning of this year and decided that even with our growth, we could go faster. And we have a very high level of ambition. So we moved that goal up to 2025. So now we're going to be 100% renewable by 2025. And I thought, we were moving fast as it was. And then to see that extra level of input and ambition and, energy around that to move the goal up even by 5 years at Amazon was phenomenally exciting and I think motivating internally. One of the things looking back over the last, I've been here 6 years, but this has been going on for a long time at Amazon. But one of the things that took us longer than I anticipated was really challenging was we are a very data-driven company. And I knew that in order to be able to set a very big goal like the climate pledge internally at Amazon, we would have to give our business leaders and operators data and information to thoroughly understand our carbon impacts and our footprint. And that a sort of back of the envelope carbon assessment would not suffice whatsoever. So we built new technologies, we built software, we built a carbon system of record, which really allows us to deep dive and go down to carbon in very granular levels to be able to give operators, even as they're changing their businesses, the information about what is our carbon footprint today. And then as we make business decisions to change potentially delivery modalities or routing optimization or things that we're looking at, what would be the carbon impact of those decisions? So we have this internal carbon system of record that has been very complex to develop. And that took longer than we anticipated, but I think is really the foundation for a lot of our work. So, investing in those kinds of systems and foundational pieces has been an important part of our work, but certainly very, very challenging.
Well, and to pick up on that, Kara, and this brings in like the scope 3 emissions situation. Like, how do you, if I want to buy something from Amazon that's going to make the environment worse, do you sell it? Do you not? Like, how does that conversation evolve at Amazon?
Yeah, well, we're working backwards from our customer and obviously want to offer all the kinds of products and services that they want to see. And we want to, as has been mentioned in some of the other comments, we want to enable sustainability for our customers wherever we can. So we're looking at, new packaging materials that we've invented that are, a fully curbside recyclable mailer. We're lightweighting packaging materials. We're taking waste out. We're doing these things on behalf of the customer. We're making, we have another interim goal called Shipment Zero, which is 50% of all of our shipments net zero carbon by 2030. So that's even a decade earlier. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can do this on behalf of the customer so that they can just come and find what they need and get it in ways, get it quickly, get it undamaged. If you're an enterprise customer or a large company working with AWS, our cloud computing technologies, we want to decarbonize all of our businesses and help you to just do that on behalf of your business. So we see ourselves from that customer obsession point of view, just trying to enable as much as we can.
So we have about 4 minutes left. It's really flew by for me, but I'd be curious to know from all of you kind of the one thing that you need to move to your goals. And that can be from a government point of view, that can mean you need new technology, but something specific that you're going to need to see in the next few years to make your job easier. Anyone, Jim, I'll let you go first this time.
Sure, I'll make it one word, transparency. So, and the reason I say that is because I can put it and point it at every direction. From a government perspective, wherever you are, I'd love to see more transparent conversation about where the government's directions are going. From a internal Verizon perspective, we want to be as transparent as possible, and we've in the last 2 years have done more of that than I have in my 25 years here at Verizon have ever done. With our SASB reporting, our TCFD reporting, which by the way are table stakes in my opinion. They're great because they're showing a whole different industry what you're doing. But most importantly, it's transparency throughout your entire ecosystem, or in my world, running the supply chain, it's end to end. Because I loved Kara's comment on enablement. I mean, our technology, we run the best networks, and we're all about enabling our customers to do more, whether it's skip a trip and remote work or whatever the case may be. So it's how do you create that enablement? But it's not the days of old where you could just say, I've got a great contract with this partner and forget about it. You have to look down their entire ecosystem. You have to look at, how they source their material, where it come from, what is the impact on those areas. And, we started to dive into it with conflict minerals several years ago. It's way beyond that now. So my one word is transparency.
Sounds good. Miguel?
Well, what I love about this is I can steal their words and then add my own. So I love the word transparency. I completely agree. That is really, really essential. But second word is data and the ways that we can enhance the way we measure and evaluate. Because as you look at things like Scope 3, where you're starting to talk about the carbon impacts of brands, this is really getting into a lot of different pieces of a jigsaw that's quite a complex jigsaw, right? So we look at everything all the way upstream, but also we have to keep considering smart ways of trying to understand what it means in the use phase when a consumer actually uses something, and what does that mean? And this is actually quite hard to do, but data and how we create those analytic tools and those ways of being able to measure consistently across, that's going to be pretty key. And my third word, because Kara was data, Jim was transparency, mine will be innovation. The only way that we're going to do this is if we really look to integrate this right at the core of all the innovation pipeline, and innovation is going to be a critical driver of everything we do. So we're starting that process. We're doing that with every one of our core brands. We have our kind of dashboard, and we're using that as a basis for the next wave of brands that will find their way into the hands of the consumer.
And Kara, round it out for us.
I would say that we need leadership and we need catalytic action. So we need leaders like Miguel and Jim to come forward. We need leaders on the political sphere. We need leaders from our communities around the world. We need leadership for people to come and commit to this. And we need really big thinking about how we are going to make catalytic changes. We are no longer in the time span where we can make incremental changes. We just need to make leaps and bounds, and we need to get behind those changes and really address the climate crisis with urgency. So I just couldn't be happier that we're starting to see that certainly from my colleagues here, and we're starting to see all of ours come together and say this is bigger than us. This is bigger than our individual companies. So it's really exciting.
I really enjoyed the conversation. It's really interesting to see people who are actually doing the work on the ground. Thank you so much. I really appreciated the panel. Kara, Miguel, and Jim, thanks a lot.